Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the session about private endpoints and links. So my name is Samir Farhat. I'm Cloud Solution Architect based and located in France, Paris region. I'm Microsoft MVP, and today I'm going to share a very important service recently introduced and recently going general available in Azure. So let's go to the agenda. So the agenda is first I will provide and show the Azure PaaS services connectivity options provided today till before private endpoints and private links. I will explain the private endpoints and private links concept and then make some demos to showcase these concepts. So the default access options for Azure PaaS services like Azure SQL, Azure Storage, Cosmos DB, web apps, any platform as a service options is via internet, which means that any service today have a public endpoint here in red circles. And if I am a user or an application and I want to reach the services, I will go through internet and through this public endpoints. Okay, so for security reasons, for many reasons, we don't want to use this pattern of communications. So Microsoft has provided in the past time private access option for this services. The first one is you can use ExpressRoute, for example, to privately access your PaaS services using the public peering, name it today the Microsoft peering. You can use the service endpoints, which is a feature that allows any workload within a virtual network to be routed through a private Microsoft backbone. And this allows virtual machines, for example, in this virtual network or any web app, for example, integrated to that network to use the service endpoints to reach privately your services. The problem with this private access options are that they have some cons. ExpressRoute, for example, is expensive, so you need to have an expensive thing to access privately to your services. It is not selective, which means when you enable the public peering for a service, all the routing and all the flows will go through this public peering, which means that you cannot choose to which service to go privately and publicly. And it is at the end a routing workaround, which means that Microsoft will only route traffic to this IP addresses through the Microsoft public peering. Service endpoints are not selective too, which means that you enable service endpoints to all the virtual network. It is a routing workaround, which means that it is routing mechanism. And at the end, it is only for virtual network workloads, which means that if you have a virtual machine or a service on premises, you cannot benefit from this service endpoints. This is why the private endpoints and private links were introduced to solve this problem and to provide you a real private options to access your platform as a service services. So the concept of private endpoint is that you have your PaaS services like here Azure SQL storage account or a Cosmos DB database. And the private, when we enable and when we create a private endpoint, at the end, we will create a network interface card in your virtual network, and then we will link it to your service or to your backend, your, for example, SQL or your storage account or your Cosmos DB, which means that this allows your on-premises users, for example, or a web app to consume directly this private IP. Every service will have a private IP address in your virtual network, and this will allow you to reach it privately. The advantages of private endpoint and private links compared to service endpoints and ExpressRoute is that you have a real private IP address in your network, in your private network. You can access from on-premises, from peered virtual networks, through express route, through VPN, for example. It is selective, which means that you choose to which service to enable private endpoints. And finally, you can make some traffic filtering via a firewall or NG in the future. Today, network security groups does not support virtual endpoints and virtual links. Okay. So for the demos, we will have two demos today. The first demo is I will create a storage account. We have a storage account and we have a Cosmos DB database, for example. I have an admin server, or it is an admin virtual machine or a server VM, and I have two private DNS zones, and we will see why we are using the private DNS zones. So the demo is I will create a private endpoint and a private link to the storage account. I will register the IP address of this private endpoint in the private DNS zone. We will do the same thing for Cosmos DB. And at the end, we will try to see how to reach privately these services through private endpoint. So let's go to the demo. So here, I will demo this. So I have a storage account named SR private link demos. Okay, I have a Cosmos DB database, private link demo, and we will start by creating the private endpoints and the private links. So if I go to this storage account, we can access the private endpoint here. Okay, so before the demo, I will try to show you that I can hear the admin and server VM, which is the virtual machine within my virtual network. I will try first to add normally using internet access. So I will use a connection string to showcase that I can publicly access this endpoint. So to use this, I will use just the connection string of the storage account. I will try here. And here we can see that I have access to the containers and to the blobs within that containers. Okay. So the second thing is that I will enable the firewall for the storage account. By enabling the firewall, I will block all accesses to the storage account, which means that after some seconds, this storage account will no longer be available from a public endpoint. So if I refresh my things, I will have an error. This is normal. So the solution to this today is to create a private endpoint connection. So I will create a private endpoint connection. A name, so I will use the same storage account name. So I will use I will use this private endpoint here. I will use the same region, but you can create it in another region, East US, sorry. So here you choose to which resource type and to which service you want to connect. So here I will do storage accounts. The resource is this resource. And here I want to create a private endpoint for the blob service, because you can choose to which sub-service or sub-resource you can create your private endpoint and link. And here I will choose to say, hey, I want to create my private endpoint, the network interface card, in this same virtual network, and I have created a subnet, okay, for all my private endpoints. I will use this private DNS zone to register this IP in this private DNS zone, but it is supported today to use another private DNS zone than private link.blob.core.windows.net, even if Microsoft is not recommending it. So we will see why. So here I will review and create my private endpoint. Unfortunately, I was not able to make this state for SQL because with COVID-19, I cannot spin up and create SQL databases today. So I will use only demo storage account and Cosmos DB. So to gain time, I will do the same thing for Cosmos DB. So I will go to Cosmos DB, virtual endpoints, and I will create a new virtual endpoint, for example, or I can use this one. Okay. So demo Cosmos. Okay. East US next resource. The same thing. I will choose that I want to connect to my Cosmos DB. I will choose it. And here I can only today use the SQL API. So here the same thing, private link. I will use the private link documents.azure.com private DNS that I have already created. And we will wait for the creation. So the creation may take up to 2 to 3 minutes. Okay. And the good thing is that we can see here that a private and network interface card will be created in our virtual network. So we'll have a private IP address that we can use and we can see. So waiting for this. So this is ongoing. So if we look to the deployment, okay, we can do the same thing via ARM templates, for example, or maybe via Terraform. So you can choose your language or your deployment methods to do that. Okay. So we have to wait, and we will see after that that within this private DNS zone, we will see that the deployment will create a record for this. Okay, so how this is how this works. So when you create a private endpoint using the Microsoft recommended private DNS zones, Microsoft will add an alias or CNAME, okay, for the blob endpoint, which means that in the future you will use the same URL, the same endpoint, the same public endpoint to access to the private endpoint, which means that when you will resolve the public endpoint of your storage account or your Cosmos DB, if you are in a virtual network, if you have the correct DNS configuration, this will be resolved to the private link, the private DNS record, and then will be resolved to the private IP address. So we will see that here. So my virtual network today is linked to my private DNS zones, which means that I have created a link here between my private DNS zone and my virtual network. This allows any virtual machine in that virtual network to automatically resolve what is here. Okay. Unfortunately, today, for example, we cannot use the same feature with Azure Functions or Azure Web App with the VNet integration, because virtual network integrations today does not support resolving DNS that is using private DNS zones. Okay, so in the second demo, we will see how to work around this. So my private link has been created. So this is my private link for my private endpoint for Cosmos DB. This is my private endpoint for the storage account. And if we click here, we can see many information about this private endpoint. And we can see that we have a private IP address for this private endpoint. We can see that a network interface card has been created, a NIC has been created for each private endpoint. And we can see that this NIC is linked to our subnet in our virtual network. So let's go back here to our virtual machines. Okay, so I will make a test to make an lookup. So if I try to resolve this, the storage account public endpoint address, for example, properties. So here we can see that Microsoft has added an alias to the public DNS name of the storage account. So if I redo the same thing, yes, this is normal. So I will detach. We can make a refresh, okay? But I prefer doing this. So here, so I will take the same connection string. Look here that in your connection string, you are using core.windows.net, which means that if you enable your private endpoints and private links, you will not have to update your applications or your code to use the new private link or DNS. So you can use it the same. Here. Ah. So let me see why. Okay, so maybe it is taking time. So let me see why it's doing this. So the private endpoint has been created. Okay. So let me show you something. I will allow this. Okay. We will make the same test. I think this is another issue. Not, yes, I think this is different issues, not related to the firewall. So let me detach it. Let me make the same thing for Cosmos DB. So, Cosmos DB, for example, Cosmos DB here, keys, primary connection string. Yes, I think that is the big issues today. This is unfortunately not good for me, but let me see why this is happening. So SI private 5.4. Okay, so let me see what is going on here in our private blob. So I see here, yes. Okay, so this is, yes, I think I have to remove, yes, because I have created two endpoints for the same thing. So what I will do is this is my private thing, this is 4, so I have to remove the 6. Okay. I don't know why I have this one, 6.1. I think this is the old record. Okay. So we'll flush the DNS. Okay, I will do the same thing. Storage. Okay, and if I ping it, normally I need to find the public IP, the private IP address. Okay, this is not going well. So let me. So this is not a good thing. I think there is an issue with the demo. It's not encouraging. Yes. Okay, maybe second thing. So private endpoint is auto-approved. So private endpoint is there. The access key is good. So I am answering some question. If I only allow access to resource from within the VNet, can I then connect to this resource using a point-to-site VPN gateway connection? Yes, yes, yes. If you can resolve the private IP address of your private endpoint, you can do it, okay? The only problem is that you have to create the proper DNS configuration to resolve the public endpoint of your service to the private IP, okay? And this is something tricky because Microsoft today is only registering the private link dot something in its DNS system. So if you are using, for example, a different DNS zone, you have to create the proper configuration, but yes, you can do it. Check the DNS of the VNet. No, the VNet is good, okay? So if I go here, if in my private link demo VNet, so DNS server is default, peering is default, private endpoints are there. I think there is something with the VM, so I will remotely, I will try to restart it quickly, okay, and ask to some questions the time that is done. Okay, so I will take some question. I will do, thanks for getting back, okay. Yes, stream URL has the fully day best published session individual as well. Okay, so there is no questions so far. So let us do this. So in your private, here we have this, private link demos, and here we have this one East US. Okay, so maybe because I haven't cleaned up my previous private links, so maybe I have issues with this, but this should work. So let me wait for it to be started. Okay, or let me in the same time do something new. So I will just create a new private endpoint, okay, with a different name. Okay, so this will okay, so different name. Okay, so new storage account, but it should work. So the same thing, storage account. My storage account is this one. Sorry. Private links, storage, yes. And I want to access my blob storage. Private link demo, and yes. Okay. In the past, I have encountered many issues, especially when the deployment tries, for example, to register the private IP in the DNS zone. I have issues with it, but I think that this will be improved in the future. Okay, so access, we will wait for the private endpoint to be done. So if you have some questions, any tutorial for private DNS integration? Yes, yes. Today, if you go to Google and private endpoint, the default configuration that Microsoft is recommending is to use using the private DNS zone, the Azure DNS private zone. So here you can find all the supported services, for example, and if you want to create one, you can connect privately to a storage account, and this will show you how to do it. Okay, so this uses the private DNS zone of the format private link dot something. Okay, and you will see the only issue with this is that if you want to use this private DNS zone in real world, the problem is that anyone must use this, which means if we are two projects and each project will want to use the private links and private endpoints and use private DNS zones, today, if you want to use the private DNS zones, you need to create a private DNS zone of the format of private link dot something. Okay, the problem with that is that each project have to create such zone. Okay, and if me, a project A, want to resolve the DNS record of a project B, normally I have to link my virtual network to the project, the A virtual network to the B virtual private DNS zone. And today, Microsoft does not support that two VNets are linked to the same private DNS zone name. So if I am VNet A and link it to privatelink.plob.core-windows.net, and I want to resolve DNS records of privatelink.plob.core-windows.net of project B, the solution today is to link my VNet to their DNS, private DNS zones, and this is not yet supported, okay? And this will be not supported. So the solution is to use custom DNS and a custom DNS server, and this is an overhead for you today, okay? So if you want, we can follow up to show you how to use custom DNS and how to use your DNS server, okay, to work around this, okay? So let me see if the new, yes, so it has been created, so this one. So normally I will do this, and I will remove the final one. Okay, final one. Okay, and try to do it again. So let me connect here. Okay, so let me open Storage Explorer. So the admin server VM can be an administration VM if you want to manage your resources privately, or it can be a server VM where you can install your application and workloads. So now I will take the private access keys, default connection string, and I don't know if it will work. Usually it should work, and unfortunately, I don't know why it's not working. Let us see, but it should work. Okay, it should work. I think it is trying to solve the IP address. Okay. Yes, it is the Microsoft. So it is loading. Refresh. Okay. So it is this one. This one. I think even Storage Explorer. Yes, so it is, yes, it is providing the good private IP addresses. But I think that because, okay, I think, yes, it will work. Okay, so now we have a good resolution. So our storage account.blob.core-windows.net is now solved to the private IP addresses of our private endpoint or private endpoints, because today you can have multiple private endpoints per service, okay? And you can choose. So it is loading. I think this is an issue with Storage Explorer, fortunately. Okay, so I think this is Storage Explorer. But you can see here that we have the proper IP addresses. So unfortunately, this is not working. So maybe we have to wait for some time. But let me switch to demo 2, okay, the way that this stabilizes, okay, because we don't have much time. So for demo 2, I will showcase another scenario where we have an Azure function and we will try to privately access to a storage account within from this function. Okay, so today when we are user Azure functions, we need to use a VNet integration, for example, the VNet integration 2, okay, to connect to the virtual network. So our traffic will be routed via this virtual network. So I will create a private endpoint for my storage account, okay. I will this time register the DNS in an on-premises DNS server or an owned DNS server, okay. And we are doing this because today, when you are Azure functions, okay, or VNet integration does not support solving DNS records in a private DNS zone. Okay, so this is not supported. So if I use a private DNS zone, my Azure function will not resolve the DNS record to a private IP address. Okay, and then I will try to access my storage account via this function. So the demo is this. So here I will have frontal web functions, okay? And these functions will only try to list the blobs within my storage account. So I have configured here the network VNet integration, which means that I have integrated this function or this service plan with my network, okay? So this is the storage account. I will create a private endpoint. So a private endpoint, okay, demo function, okay, demo function. The name of the private endpoint, this is not the name of the DNS, okay. I think this is just to see where is my virtual network is located. So this, yes. So my virtual is ES2, yes, so ES2. So the same thing, storage account, and the resource will be this resource. So it is demo private links function. Demo private link functions. And I will try to access my blob. Okay. So my VNet is on-prem VNet and private links. I will choose no. I will not integrate my private link with private DNS zone, and I will create. So to try the function first, I will put this one. So there is a container named functions, and we have 2 blobs here. So I will try to solve this. So I will just, yes, it is all network. So here, my function will show me the blobs here. It is a list of blobs, okay? So if I disable the firewall, okay, and if we wait a little bit, we will see that my functions is not able to list my blobs, and this is normal because the firewall has been enabled. So enable to reach the storage account. So we will wait for the private endpoint to be created, okay? And what can we do? Here on my on-prem VNet is my DNS server. It is the DNS server used by my virtual network. So this is my DNS server, and we can see here that my virtual network is using this server, our DNS server. And in order to do this, you have to create zones in your DNS server, okay, of the zones of the public endpoint of your PaaS services. So I have created a zone privatelink.blob.core.windows.net. Okay, and here I will add the host name for my private endpoint. So let us wait. Okay, let us wait. It is being created. Takes time, so the deployments is 15 seconds. This is me, no? This is us. DNS records, endpoint, yes. Private, yes, it's good. So where is it? Looks like there is an issue, so let's do it again. Okay, so MVP, demo blocks, what is going on? Demo function. Looks like, so storage accounts. I'm really sorry, this will be this one. Yes, blobs, and on-prem private links, yes, no. So validation passed. Yes, I think that I have not clicked the create endpoint, the create button. So yes, this is it. So I will wait for my private endpoint to have a private IP address, okay, and I will register it within my DNS. So I have to wait. And how this works when your Azure function will resolve the public endpoint of your storage account, which means when your Azure function will resolve this, okay, Microsoft will say, hey, you have to resolve demo private links function dot private endpoints dot private link dot blob dot core dot windows dot net. Okay, so when my Azure function will try to resolve this private DNS record, my on-premises DNS server will provide the private IP address of my storage account. Okay, so we just have to wait for this private to be created. So this is it, demo function. So this is it, okay, and this is the IP address, okay. So it is demo private links function. So demo private links function, and I will just, it is the same, okay. So it is the same. So here my function should now work. Okay, you have to wait, and this is it. Okay, so my function now is working, even if my storage account have the firewall enabled and any public access is prohibited. So my function now is resolved to the private IP address of the endpoint, and then it can do it. So this opens up to many applications and many things that you can do today for your application. You can access privately any platform as a service like Azure SQL, for example, like Cosmos DB, like even Key Vault. Okay, so you can do this. So this is it. So let me go here and this. Yes. So now we can see that this is my first demo, for example, and here we can see that the work is good. So we can see here that my admin server VM is resolving. Okay, sorry. There is an error. Enable. This is really, yes. So my Cosmos DB is working. Okay, so this is good. Okay, so query tab, execute query. So it is working, and here it is a demo issue, but it should work. Okay, so I have here, it should work. So we see that for Cosmos DB, for example, it is working. And I don't know why it is not working for my storage account, but we are out of time, so sorry for this. So, but we have proven that we can access storage account privately via Azure function. Okay, so this is the demo. For additional information, for example, custom names are supported but tricky to implement. Okay, so we can make a follow-up to show you how to do it, but this is it. You have to create in your on-premises server or own DNS server the private link dot something DNS zone and register your private endpoint record there. Okay. For the pricing, private endpoints today are per hour and per data, which means that for a private endpoint, this will cost you $7 per month, in addition to the data processed, which means which is $0.01 per gigabyte or $10 per terabyte, and the data processed in and out. For many additional services will be supported in the future. You have the list of services in the Microsoft documentation. And for example, today, Azure Container Registry is in preview. So for example, you can do it. So I am waiting for your questions. If you have some questions, so I will see my Skype account. Any tutorial? Yes. Troubleshooting tip from YouTube chat. Is the private DNS zone linked with the VNet? Yes, it is linked. It should work. It should work. This is a demo issue. Okay, it should work. And I had even Wireshark to see that the traffic from my Azure Storage Explorer to the private endpoint is private and that the private IP address is used. Yes. If I only allow access to resources, then I connect. Yes. Site VPN. Yes. Do you have any additional questions, Mark?
No, I think that's it for now.
Yes, it is very clear. Okay, so keep in mind today that private endpoints and private links is the best way and to privately access your resources. Okay, even if service endpoints do it, but service endpoints will no longer provide and receive new features from Microsoft, and private links and private endpoints are the way to go. Okay. Any questions?
All right. Yeah, no questions popping up, it seems. That was a very interesting session, Samir. Thank you for that.
Yes. Okay, retracted.
And yeah, it looks like nothing else is coming in, so I guess we can wrap it up here, and we'll see you, for those watching online, we will see you again in about 15 minutes from now.
Okay, thank you very much, guys. How do you resolve the private link DNS name from on-prem machine on the other end of a VPN? It is the same thing, okay? If your VPN can reach the remote network, which means the network when your private endpoint is located, where the network interface is located, in your DNS server, you have just to do this thing, which means you have, you have to do this thing. So in your DNS server that is used by your VPN client, you have to create the private link.blob.core.windows.net, for example, and add the record for your private endpoint. This way, when your client will resolve the public endpoint of your servers, Microsoft will provide you where in the DNS resolution, you will receive, hey, please resolve your resource.privatelink.blob.core.windows.net. Okay, so your client will reach to your server, your on-premises DNS server, to make this resolution, will pick up the private IP address of your endpoint, and then the routing is there. Okay, so if your VPN will allow your clients to reach your target virtual network or your private endpoint IP address, it will be good. It will work. Okay, Matt Brown. It was clear, Matt? Yeah, I think. Matt.
Looks like it.
Yes.
Yep. All right.
Okay, so thank you very much. Keep in mind that private endpoint and private link are a very simple concept. It is that private link is very data-centric approach will have a per tag access control for PaaS services. I don't seem to understand the question. Per tag access control for PaaS services. Yes, if you are talking about Azure tags or Azure service tags, yes, we have service tags for to be used by Azure Firewall, for example, or network security groups, and we can filter. But this is not selective. The good thing with private endpoints is that they are very selective. You can choose which service to access privately and which service to access publicly, and you can make full filtering. Okay, it's a long discussion. Matt Brown. Okay, yes, let us follow it. So if you can reach me on my email address, okay, so this is my email address, or you can reach me via LinkedIn or in my blog. Okay, so I will be happy to answer your question and even showcase you some other very interesting stuff about private links and private endpoints. Okay.
Right, cool. Yeah, maybe it could make sense to hang out on the chat for a little while as well, in case
Yes.
people have more questions.